also traditional Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. To understand.
Atheist and agnostic.
Oh, feels like it's been so long.
It has been.
Because you've just been away.
Yeah.
But our audience doesn't know that.
No. Unless you're on our Discord.
Right.
And then you know.
Yeah.
Where Katie is at all times. It's actually a feature of the Discord.
Wonderful tracking abilities.
Horrifying.
Spreading the good word of the holy watermelon.
Right? Just trying to get some converts overseas, but I always go to super Catholic countries and they don't really seem interested in much of anything.
Being critical about their religious situation.
Right? Terrible. Yeah. I went to another Catholic country. They didn't like gold as much as Portugal, though.
Yeah.
It was a lot of
it feels off-brand.
opulent altars in Portugal, not so much in Ireland.
Yeah.
But a lot of Jesus.
Yes.
There was one stained glass, and it was all the apostles, and they were all labeled. And then there was this guy in the middle who wasn't labeled, and I was like, how the fuck are we supposed to know who that is?
You're
Peter.
just supposed to know.
How are we supposed to know? There's Peter and Simon and Judas, and they're all nicely labeled, and this fucker in the middle. I was like, who's that?
Did he have a halo?
Maybe. And he got a bigger pane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he was more important for some reason.
It was like this big.
Yeah. With arms outstretched.
Terrible.
I wonder who that could have been.
I have no idea. Because it wasn't labeled.
You never know, because I haven't been there.
Yeah, and it wasn't labeled, so I can't tell you either. Speaking of Jesus, today we're going to talk about religious clothing. That was a terrible transition, but...
Not a natural segue.
No, but I'm going to force it anyway. So today we're talking about religious clothing.
On the Holy Watermelon Podcast.
It's been a minute. Only 3 years, and after 2 weeks, I'm like, how do we start an episode?
So, consciously or not, I think how you dress says a lot about you.
I think so.
Sometimes I just want to communicate to the world that I do not want to be responsible. And my way of doing that is not wearing pants.
My husband and our sound guy always says avoid people that wear pajama pants in public.
Yeah, sure.
Because if you're willing to wear pajama pants in public, you clearly don't give a fuck about anything. So...
I mean, that does seem to be what is being deliberately communicated.
Yeah, so they'll cut you as soon as look at you because they're willing to wear pajama pants in public.
Oh, and nobody's carrying anything heavy like a knife in those pajama pants pockets.
But they'll do
that's
something.
how mellow they are.
That's true, but they'll do something crazy because they don't
maybe.
care. Yeah. Anyway. And yeah, for just about as long as people have been around and have been concerned about sending the right messages to their gods, people have been dressing for them.
Yeah. Some people get fancy. Some people get real minimalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of nifty. So we're gonna explore that.
All right. And you've gone like way back.
Oh, yeah.
You went all the way back to animist tradition.
Yeah. Yeah, the primal religious traditions, as far back as we can imagine humanity's behavior, is mostly based on how we observe what we consider more primitive cultures today, unfortunately, is the way we have to look at that. It's expected that early in human history, before shirts were normal, shamans and medicine men and whatever cultural equivalents there might be, painted their faces and chests to mark themselves as different from the people around them. And sometimes this would look really cool. Sometimes they would also have like capes and headdresses made of bear skins or whatever sort of animal was interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, not even as far back as that. We see that in our indigenous traditions here in Canada.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. Which is how we make guesses on
about primal. And, okay.
And so this differentness is the basis of the whole idea of holiness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the word holy and saint, all of that just means set apart.
Right.
Different. Maybe weird.
Often weird.
Very often. And so it's the feeling that it's more godly or superior to everybody else is a pretty natural social development, I think. But it's not really necessary or explicitly inherent in the deal. It's just what we've done as a culture. We look up to these people because what they tell us maybe is hard to question because, you know, there's the whole burden of they can't be disproven.
Right.
Tricky business.
Yep.
So as clothing traditions go, this is pretty interesting. These early ancestors who covered their more sensitive bits didn't necessarily do it out of religious devotion. I would say for the most part, it was a bit about just protecting your sensitive bits from bugs and pointy sticks.
Yeah, fair.
That's a pretty good reason.
I still do that.
Right?
Yeah.
As clothing traditions were evolving throughout our history, people would often, though not exclusively, select animal skins to wear based on specific traits that they observed in those animals. The might of a bear, the speed of a cheetah, that sort of thing.
Cool.
Yeah. And so these are also often connected with specific gods. So I'm still very convinced that what we see in the Egyptian tradition of these men with animal heads, that's a newer evolution of an older tradition where a person would wear the skin with the head as the headdress as a model and representation of just the natural animal as the god figure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, so now we're going to break down what we see in world religions for their clothing.
Stuff that we can actually point at in real life.
And say that, yeah. So we'll start with Buddhism. Buddhists, particularly those who are committed to a monastic life, wear simple clothing. They typically wear colorful robes that are on the warmer half of the spectrum. So you'll see lots of reds and oranges and yellows.
Not so much blue.
No.
Oh, I like blue. But
Buddhists don't.
Right.
These robes vary a little bit in color from one group to another, but the idea is a deliberate uniform signifying a uniformity of their intention.
Focusing on the good things.
And I don't think we talked about this only because I'm thinking about it in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bhagwan cult, that was an offshoot of Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
They wore exclusively reds and oranges.
Mm-hmm.
What did they call themselves? I can't remember, but there's a great documentary called Wild Wild Country on them. We've talked about them in bits and pieces over the years.
A few times.
But yeah, they wore exclusively red and orange too. So obviously there's some origin that is
I think
similar.
there's a cultural value placed on that warmer part of the spectrum. And well, the what we call the colder part of the spectrum, the blue, violet, green, but that's usually restricted to gods in a lot of those Eastern cultures.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the gods will be illustrated with blue or green skin.
I guess so, yeah. Which
is really helpful for people who lean more into the Heaven's Gate direction of, well, they must be aliens.
I was going to say, maybe we have to do this episode, but cults.
Sure. I'm on board, yeah.
Because, yeah, the Bhagwan's followers, who, again, I can't remember the Rajneeshi, there we go. They had their own uniform, and Heaven's Gate all died in the same outfit, which we did talk about.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, we could do this, but cults. Anyway.
Yeah.
But we'll stick with world religion for today.
I like it. Jainism, relatively small for a world religion. We haven't even done a focused episode on this group yet, but we've talked about them and various aspects of them in so many episodes now. Like Buddhist monks, Jain monks and nuns will also wear simple robes, but they prefer white. Though sometimes you might see pale colors in the mix, but they'll be pale.
So it's not quite right to say that the sari is a religious garment. It is notable that Indian Zoroastrians tend to wear the sari over their right shoulder rather than what is typical as the left shoulder.
I thought that was kind of nifty.
Yeah.
We're with you people, but we're different.
A little bit different. The now common pajamas were adopted from the Indo-Iranian daytime trouser.
I love that we have transformed from nightwear to now people are wearing it during the daytime. Helps you know who you want to hang out with.
Right.
So maybe you want to hang out with pajama people during the day. Maybe you don't. Now there's a line. Brahmins,
upon entering adulthood around age 10, give or take a year, or sometimes even later, are endowed in a ceremony with a sacred thread that runs around their torso, hanging from the left shoulder. So like a seatbelt?
Kind of like a seatbelt, but it's it's a really thin thread.
Yeah, but that's just, I'm wondering, it goes around the torso.
Yeah.
But around the left shoulder. So,
Yeah,
okay.
like when you see a person wearing a sash.
Yeah,
it would
okay,
be a band all the way
just
around, but
thin.
diagonally around the body. But yeah, this is just a thin thread.
Okay, a sash was a way better example than a seatbelt. Thank you. This is why we're teammates.
Right? All right.
Now heading to the west.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Middle-ish?
Western religions, air quotes, or more appropriately named, the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to talk about in these ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules, a lot of interesting things that you might see out in the world. And a lot of that is just because this is the world we live in.
And of course, we're going to talk a lot about Judaism and Islam, because, and I love always reminding people of this, we have orthopraxic religions and orthodox religions. And
I mean, there's a little bit of both in most of them.
But
some have a
Judaism and
stronger
Islam are
leaning.
very orthopractic. And so there's a lot of rules on clothing that if you want to jump into, which we're about to, you can.
So in ancient Israel, the cult of Yahweh had a bunch of clothing specifically designed for use in the temple rituals. The vestments of the high priest are described in the Torah in great detail. There is a tunic, which is pretty regular, but it's covered with brightly colored robe that had little bells and knots made to look like pomegranates hanging on the bottom fringe.
Cute.
People work into this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And then there was the Hoshin, which was a breastplate studded with a dozen different colored stones. Each of the different of the dozen represents a tribe of Israel.
Also neat.
Yeah. But because there's actually more than 12 tribes of Israel, the Levites are never counted in the 12. They get a separate stone that sits on the shoulders of the breastplate rather than in with the body of a nice rectangular 12. There was also a pocket in the back of this breastplate. So it was, at least part of it was soft. And so inside this pocket, there was a couple of rocks. So it's often thought that one was black, one was white. They would be used for divination, or maybe they were both glass. Some people speculate that they would be used as spectacles to look into the heavens through these rocks. But they were called the Urim and Thummim. Basically, the idea behind those names is light and truth, that you're going to get the truth with these rocks. So maybe it was a black one and a white one, pull it out. No, this dude is full of baloney kind of business. And then around his waist, the high priest would wear an apron, often called an ephod, that would connect to the breastplate. So it's all really quite elaborate and connected. Yeah.
Does the apron here reflect what we see in Masons and Mormons?
It does.
Okay. I don't know how much you can share because both of those are quite secretive. But
and the wearing of the apron is similar. The function design-wise is pretty similar, but the narrative that's attached to them in all three cases is different.
Okay, interesting. Because I know because they were stoneworkers, is the Masons would wear aprons to work in. I know that one, and now I know this one.
Yeah, the priests would also wear turbans.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's speculation that the high priest would wear the flat top turban, like you would see commonly on the really good, the mighty looking Sikh turbans.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than the round ones that are really good with the blade around them.
Yeah.
And then all of the other priests would wear a more conic one, looking more like Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nice.
That's mostly speculation, though.
The early story in the Torah tells us about the beginning of clothing when it became evident that people should have some protective layers over their skin. Adam and Hava make some flimsy clothes. Who's Hava?
Adam's wife.
Why is it Hava and not Eve?
Oh, Eve is a product of
bastardization.
Bastardizing language through translation.
All right. Preston put in the OG Hava in the notes. Adam and Hava make some flimsy clothes from fig leaves before they are taught to sacrifice animals and make much more durable clothing from their skins.
Yay!
Yay! Today, it's common in some communities to see Jewish men walking the streets in long black coats, which aren't specifically religious, but they do symbolize a specific and deliberate disinterest in popular fashion. Any deviation from the standard indicates that you don't have your priorities.
Like the sari, it's not religious, but there's a lot of religious baggage held in those pockets.
There's a few things that I added to these notes as well that,
Perfect.
again, aren't religious, but it is definitely like in versus out. So I might actually jump to the streamel while we talk about non-religious religious clothing.
Sure.
The streamel is, again, no religious significance, but is a uniquely Jewish fashion. These large cylindrical fur hats are popular among Ashkenazi Jews, a subsect of Hasidic Judaism. Streimels are very expensive. A real one, you can get fake ones,
Of course.
ranging from $1,000 to $5,000 or even more.
Wow.
So that's, again, just kind of like in versus out. Not religious, but not religious.
So I've been toying with the idea of buying a hat for a while. I specifically want a regular, traditional North American baseball cap that just says sport.
Oh, yeah, I have
on the
that
front.
saved on my Amazon list.
Yeah. As far as a novelty out-group hat goes, I think it's great. I haven't hit buy yet because the price tag is too high, and it's nowhere near $1,000.
I know. Yeah, I have that same one saved because I feel the same about sports.
But see, I have so many friends who are way into sports.
Right, so you can be supportive regardless of the sport that they're in. Yeah,
exactly.
no, I definitely want...
It's not team specific. It's great.
I love it. So if you want to gift the Holy Watermelon host something,
Right?
2 baseball caps to be...
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. That'd be great. I don't know if we talked about this. Phenomenal memoir and subsequently made into a dramatized TV series, Unorthodox, by Deborah Feldman, I believe is her name. When they made the TV series, it's about Hasidic Jews, and they had to create fake streimels because they couldn't afford real ones for the filming of the documentary. That's how expensive they are and how many they needed. Sorry, it's not a documentary. It's a dramatization of her memoir. Yeah, anyway, that's how I know you could get fake ones because
Of course.
I saw the behind the scenes and they're like, yeah, we couldn't fucking afford these. So,
I mean, you can get a decent fabric that'll do the trick with faux fur at your various shops, hobby shops, but that's work and money.
Yeah. So under these jackets that are non-religious, there is religious garb. Under those coats, you can expect to find a shirt with tassels hanging called
Tzitzis.
tzitzis. I was like, is it like tzatziki? Tzitzi.
Tzatziki. You're going to have a problem.
That's literally where my brain went. But it is spelled T-Z-I, so tzitzi. This is inspired by a passage from the book of Numbers, not an accounting manual, commanding the Israelites to put tassels on the 4 corners of a garment. Some interpret this to be a prayer shawl. Many others make it part of the shirt. The purpose recorded in Numbers is to remind the wearer to avoid lust.
So if you're about to take it off to do something, hopefully those tassels remind you, hey.
No. Or you're doing it under the prescribed circumstance.
Right. Some people will also wear a special girdle during formal prayers, but this is losing popularity. I think it's interesting that, I mean, it's actually just called girdle, except for there's this wonderful trick of the Yiddish language pulling from German, that it's the girdle. It's a girdle.
Men will often obey a passage in Leviticus forbidding the marring of the corners of the beard. This is generally accepted to mean don't cut your sideburns. So this is where we see the long curls in Orthodox men and boys.
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't see. I always think it's a possibility that we were talking about the bottom corners and not the top corners.
I mean, yeah.
Stop trying to make your beard pointy and let it be bushy.
Go out, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
They must curl them. Like there's no way.
I mean, some do for
every
sure.
Jewish man has perfect ringlets.
You gotta put effort into it.
And I think this is probably the best known in Judaism is the kippah or the yarmulke. It's the cap worn by Jewish men. I'm like showing people, but this is an audio medium. It's a little
Skull cap.
Yeah, little skull cap. As it's customary for them to cover their heads, it is required to be worn during prayer, but more conservative or Orthodox Jews will wear it all the time. Fun fact, is not required by a non-Jewish person to wear a yarmulke when they're visiting a synagogue, although it is a sign of respect to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of a yarmulke is to bring awareness to God that he is watching from above. So there's always something reminding you.
Yeah. There's usually a pattern that's, as a circle, it's easy to kind of imagine that it's like an iris of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's watching close.
And fun fact, I feel like this maybe isn't as commonly known, especially because it's done. But women in Judaism are also required to cover their hair, very similar to Islam. Again, this is predominantly in conservative and Orthodox Judaism, and they have to cover their hair after marriage. Whereas, and I guess we'll get into this, but in Islam, it's usually after your first period, you have to cover your hair.
Right.
And it's around any men other than their husbands or sons. So some women will cover their hair with a mitpachat. Mitpachat? How would you say that?
Mitpaka?
Mitpaka? Wow. A scarf.
Spitzel.
A partial wig with hair on the front and then a small scarf or hat on the back. Or a...
Shaitel? 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 I don't know.
I'd say sheitel as a German word, but it's not.
Oh, it's definitely a Yiddish word, I would guess, by the way it sounds.
Yeah. Which has roots in German, which is a full wig. So some women will opt for a wig, and who opt for a wig, will keep their hair, while others will just shave their heads bald and then wear a wig on top.
I mean, it's certainly easier to throw on a wig if you're bald instead of wrapping your hair up in a wig cap and then throwing the wig on.
But I just and there's a little bit of...
I never really was aware of the wearing a wig over your hair business until I saw Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
And then Seymour do that all the time. It's like, oh, okay. Fun.
And... But I understand the ease of being bald, but if the whole point, and maybe we need to do more research into this, is
if you're bald, no one's going to see your hair. It's great. You're following the rules.
Yeah, but in Islam, it's because hair is a sexual part of the body. We've had this conversation before.
Right.
It's like boobs or a butt or whatever. You cover it because it's sexual.
Yeah.
So if you're covering your hair because you're married and you now have a husband,
mm-hmm.
and you're chopping off an attractive part of your body for him, and then putting on a wig so you're attractive to everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't think, please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying people who are bald are ugly. But you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. It feels weird.
Binding your boobs for your husband to then put on a fake pair of boobs to go in public.
Yeah.
So, and again, to wear a wig over, you're putting fake boobs over your real boobs.
Yeah.
Is still sexy.
Yeah.
And especially with how good wigs are now.
Sure. I'm going to say that the whole wearing a wig over your own hair is definitely not the orthodox practice. That's more of a midway, I'm following the rules, but still looking the way I want to look practice.
Yeah.
The orthodox practice is wear a scarf.
Or go bald and then wear a wig. And,
I'm going to...
In unorthodox, which we've just talked about.
It doesn't feel like a genuinely orthodox practice, though.
But in unorthodox, she shaves her head when she gets married and wears a wig.
But it defeats the purpose.
Absolutely. But I'm sure there's some rabbi we could talk to help make it make sense. But that's it again. And it was in the show, it shows it, but it's also in her memoir that she shaves her head. So she did it.
Yes. An orthodox community with a maybe ridiculous practice?
No.
Orthodox in name and in some practices, less orthodox in other.
Mm-hmm.
As is true of every group that we're going to call fundamentalist or really...
Ultra-conservative,
Ultra-conservative, yeah.
You gotta watch mine too.
Yeah.
Mine keep Kabbalists. Kabbalists? Cannibals.
Yeah. Some Kabbalists.
That's how I feel saying it.
Some Kabbalists and other not-so-Jewish spiritualists wear a red wool string around the left wrist to ward off the evil eye. I think we talked about this recently on Discord, the evil eye.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex thing that's generally, easily, and mostly accurately boiled down to this idea that if somebody envies you, something bad is going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe don't encourage people to envy you by showing off how great you are. I like the old Roman thing of just wear a dick around your neck. That would ward off the evil eye.
I mean, yeah, that'll ward off a lot of stuff if you're wearing a dick around your neck.
I mean, usually it was like a copper dick, not like a severed penis.
Good. Good. That second one's horrifying.
So in Islam, at a minimum, men are expected to stay covered between their navel and their knees. Cover your shame. Nice and simple. Women are expected to cover the wrists all the way to the wrists and ankles as well. And these areas are called aura, and which roughly translates to nakedness, a word that comes up an awful lot in the Bible as well, that you should cover your nakedness. Haya, or haya, means modesty, and it's the basic rule of dressing in Islam.
Of course, the best probably known piece of clothing in Islam is the hijab, and this refers to various types of head coverings worn by Muslim women. So there are many different styles that share similarities with Jewish and Christian head coverings, and wearing the hijab has actually been increasing as many Muslims see it as a way to express faith and remain modest.
But of course, nothing is monolithic. The general consensus is that the hijab is preferred, but not mandated to be worn. You will find places where it's a little bit more mandatory.
And then some places where people don't wear it at all.
Yeah.
Actually, Afghanistan till the 70s, women didn't wear the hijab.
Yeah, I think Iran was the same way.
And Indonesia still to this day, women don't particularly wear the hijab. And it's a very Muslim country.
Yeah.
Like in Judaism, the hijab is not required to be worn around close family.
Right.
The typical rule is like men you couldn't marry, so your brothers.
Yeah.
Or that you are literally married to. So your husband, your sons, you can wear it around, your brothers, your dad. Yeah. But like your husband's brothers, you'd have to wear a hijab because you could hypothetically have married them.
Yeah. So cover it up. Don't tempt anybody to do something that is now illegal that wasn't previously. There's also the burqa, also known as the chadari. The garment fully covers the body and the face. Even eyes are covered, as only a small mesh screen is sewn in for the wearer to see out. Most Islamic scholars agree that there is no requirement in Islam to cover the face, but not all.
In Afghanistan, during the Taliban rule, it was required by law for women to wear burqa. And some women wear the burqa as a symbol of piety, including the Haredi, an ultra-Orthodox sect of Jews in Israel. So I know we're talking about Islam, but Jewish women also wear the burqa.
Because traditions sometimes jump fences.
Yeah, they do. And so does fashion.
Absolutely. And then there's the niqab. Niqabs are also used to cover a woman's face in Islam. So a half niqab attaches with an elastic around the face and leaves the eyes and forehead visible while covering the nose, mouth, and neck. A full niqab is a multi-layered sheared veil which allows the wearer to see out, but someone observing the woman wouldn't be able to see her eyes. The layers of the niqab can be flipped up and worn over the head for convenience. The idea that a woman should be covered is popular in fundamentalist Muslim communities, though it is not an idea introduced in the Quran or any of the hadiths. It's just a cultural thing.
Yeah, and we talked about this before. The idea of even covering yourself comes from this idea of a fabric divider separating men's spaces and women's spaces.
Yeah.
But of course, you can't just talk about women in Islam.
No, of course. So a keffiyeh is a headdress worn by men in the Middle East. These are square scarves that are originally provided protection from sun and dust, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of this area is a desert.
Yeah.
An agal holds the keffiyeh in place. It's a black cord worn around the head with the headdress in place.
If you Google any Middle Eastern politicians, you'll
see the black robe.
Yeah. And the keffiyeh.
Yes. It's not a thin strand like the one that
it's a big old.
The Hindu priests would wear. It's thick. Topically, a black and white checkered keffiyeh is a symbol of solidarity with Palestine. You will see these around if you look.
Yep. I just saw one for our recent protest, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Sikhism,
we're jumping back. We should have grouped them, but we're jumping back to the east.
No, this is only an adjacent step because
that's true.
There's a lot of Muslim philosophy and tradition and influence in Sikhism. Khalsa Sikhs wear a collection of 5 things, usually the 5 Ks. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but we're going to do it again because it's important. So the dastar doesn't start with a K. That's okay. Ignore that for now. More commonly known in the West as a turban, the dastar represents equality, courage, piety, and self-respect. The dastar is used to cover their kesh, uncut hair. And then there's the kanga, a comb that is usually hidden in the kesh, except for when it's time to use it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There's the kirpan, a sword to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Kara, a steel bracelet, represents unbreakable attachment to God, but when times get tough, it's also a pretty decent knuckle duster. And then there's the katra. The devout are expected to wear specifically designed undergarments to preserve modesty, regardless of whatever else is worn, to remind the wearer of the covenant to stay chaste. I don't know, an extra layer of clothing can be helpful to discourage infidelity. Which is what all of these extra layers of fabric
Like when you
have been.
play hot potato and you have to unwrap the gift so many times. No? You've never played hot potato?
I don't think I've played hot potato that way. Hot potato is hot. Don't let it touch the ground, but
Yeah,
don't
and then
hold
eventually
it.
someone has to unwrap a layer and you keep going.
Okay, I think those are different things.
Okay. Let us know on Discord how you played hot potato.
Yeah.
Christianity. Yeah, despite its Jewish origins, Christianity has very few callbacks to Jewish clothing.
Well, I mean, most of the things we've talked about in Jewish clothing so far seem to have developed after Christianity split away.
In the old imperial tradition, churches modeled their priestly vestments after those of the Roman ruling class. Priests and priest plus. You mean like bishops and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Can get awfully fancy, especially if you're the top dog of your imperial church. Monks and nuns usually go in the opposite direction, deliberately looking almost as poor as they promise to be without bringing shame upon themselves and by extension their God.
The image that you see today of the Catholic priest actually wasn't even standardized until the 20th century when Pope John Paul II made some important decisions.
Interesting.
He realized that it is, and I'll quote, "It is particularly important that the community be able to recognize the priest by his attire." I
Yeah.
guess they just were pretty loosey beforehand. So he
That
said
doesn't
no.
feel like even that very long, like that long ago.
JP2 is pretty recent history.
Yeah.
And so now we see the little Roman collar, the white square on the black shirt. That's the uniform, as opposed to what was previously just reasonably common. And then, of course, there's all
They
the
can
extra
get
fancy
dressed up
dress.
for whatever occasion.
Yeah, where they're specifically modeled after the old Roman ruling class, which early Christians would not have liked very much.
Right.
But imperial power does a lot of bad things to a church.
Yep.
But not all Christian traditions have a notable style. Some are just picky about what popular fashions you adopt. Some are picky about what fashions you don't adopt. So the Evangelical Wesleyan Church published a book of discipline in 2015. And this is a rather long segment that I pulled from it. It says, "We require our women to appear in public with dresses of modest length, sleeves of modest length, modest necklines, and modest hose. The wearing of split skirts, slacks, jeans, artificial flowers, or feathers is forbidden. Moreover, we require our men to conform to the scriptural standards of decent and modest attire. We require that when they appear in public, they wear shirts with sleeves of modest length. We require that all our people appear in public with sleeves below the elbows. Women's hemlines are to be modestly below the knees. Our people are forbidden to appear in public with transparent or immodest apparel, including shorts or bathing suits. Parents are required to dress their children modestly in conformity with our general principles of Christian attire. We further prohibit our people from participating in the practices of body piercing, tattooing, or body art."
Wow. I will say appreciate how specific it is.
Yeah, there's no fuzzy lines here.
Because often when people say modest, like people have different ideas of what that means,
Oh, for sure.
right? Like you
Just
look
don't
at
have your tits out. Man or woman.
right, but they think it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Your
while
elbows.
Your
ugly, ugly elbows.
So while I disagree with it, I appreciate that it's specific because I spend way too much time on trad Instagram.
You do.
My husband would agree with you. And I just like to be mad. And yeah, a lot of the people will be like, look at this immodest woman. And she'll be like in a t-shirt and jeans. And you're like, it's pretty modest, I think. But they don't
See,
think it
there's
is.
this thing about pants and jeans that it's a lot easier to pretend you're not wearing anything with the right set of pants if they're the right color.
Correct.
Whereas a skirt isn't usually going to fool anybody into thinking that you might not be wearing anything.
Because it's like a blanket around your legs.
You'll notice that the body just keeps going in a cylinder. And
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I mean, you can get some tight skirts that also don't leave it much to the imagination.
And don't have splits in them.
Right.
A pencil skirt
Important.
is very sexy and goes below the knees. I'd be the person who'd be like,
Here's the rules.
here's the rule.
And here's how I can stay within the rules while also...
Looking like a whore. They see nothing about necklines or how tight the shirts are. So
They do say something about necklines.
Oh, did they?
Modest.
What does that mean?
Presumably no cleavage.
Okay, well, you can go pretty far.
I mean, if you have small breasts, you can go really
Very
quite far.
Go all the way.
The modest neckline remains undefined, and maybe they should have thought harder about that.
Because I'm going to show up. Be like, but I'm following your guideline.
Right. And then let's look at a specific subsect of Christianity.
Our favorite.
The Latter-day Saints. I think most famously, you're used to seeing the missionaries. Those young boys with their white shirts and their little black
Name
pocket
tag.
protector
Yeah.
name tag. That's what everybody's used to seeing. There's actually very strict rules about what they're supposed to wear. They've got a whole handbook about how they're supposed to do everything they do.
Okay, I was going to say about how they dress. I'm like, they literally wear 3 things. I don't know how you can have a whole
They
handbook.
buy their own clothes, right? So there's got to be rules about what it is you're buying. And I mean, for the most part, what we see for the sister missionaries, because there are women who do this as well as men, there's actually quite a lot of freedom for what the women wear.
Oh, interesting.
It's a lot like the description that we just read, for the most part. Your skirt's got to go past your knees, and there are times when you can wear pants, actually, so it's not even that strict.
Oh, nice.
But, you know, a lot of freedom.
Because they all ride bikes, so it's probably easier to...
Sometimes they do. Yeah.
They don't have cars. They definitely...
They often have cars.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I had a car for almost my whole 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That you got to drive?
No, I didn't do any of the driving.
Someone drove you.
Well, my companion would do the driving.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't have a driver's license at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I would just get paired with a guy who did. Easy fix.
But you could have driven had you a license.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. But there's one thing that has bugged me for most of that time, and occasionally bugs me every now and then for a few minutes when I see somebody break this rule. No pegging.
Excuse me? That sounds very sexual.
There's this little bit, and I don't know for sure if it's even still in the White Handbook anymore, but 10, 15 years ago it was, that pegged trousers were straight up forbidden.
I don't know what a peg trouser.
Neither did any of the missionaries I served with.
But you clearly do.
And none of them believed me when I told them what it was. But generally, your trousers are relatively straight cut.
Mm-hmm.
Pegged trousers are when they come to a point with the shape of your leg. Skinny jeans are pegged trousers. That is illegal. I've served around a lot of missionaries who preferred to wear the skinny style of trousers.
I mean, especially when you were 18, 19.
Oh, yeah.
Very popular.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the time.
Has anyone ever gotten in trouble for it?
No, literally never.
Because nobody knows what I mean.
The people who wrote the book, they were so far away from the opportunity to police it.
Fair.
But less famously, there are special clothing that is worn in Latter-day Saint temples. So in the temples, Latter-day Saints have a series of rituals collectively called the endowment. They're modeled after the mysteries of the Israelite temples in Jerusalem, and ceremonial clothing that is modeled loosely after that of the ancient priests. There's a white robe, there's an apron, and there's something that looks vaguely like a turban for the men and a veil for the women. Near the beginning of that collection of rituals, an initiate agrees to wear undergarments that connect directly to the story of Adam and Eve.
Hava.
It's not ever pronounced Hava in the Latter-day Saint tradition, but in the old Hebrew,
Okay,
it
fine.
would have looked like Hava. I did deliberately spell it 2 different ways. So it's directly connected to the story of Adam and Eve. In the opening chapters of Genesis, these garments represent a covenant with Christ, that in the same way that offering sacrifices anciently yielded protective skins for their clothing, honoring current covenants would be rewarded with spiritual protection, including at least basic salvation. And so this garment is what is so often called the magical Mormon underwear.
It's not Mormon magic underwear.
And it's been the subject of an awful lot of modern myths and ridiculous folk legends of people being protected from stabbings and shootings. It's almost always cotton. It's just not suited to that. It's definitely more of just a spiritual symbol for the person who's wearing it.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
mean,
for
when
other
people
people.
ask me, not that I'm a Mormon, but they know I know a lot of Mormons,
Mhm.
I always compare it to the yarmulke, right? It's just this reminder that God is present.
Sure.
And you?
Oh, what's the name? The best comparison I've seen that we've talked about here is the kachra for the Sikhs.
Yeah.
It's a piece of fabric that you made a covenant to wear. And part of its function is that it reminds you when you're getting ready to do something that maybe you shouldn't of, hey, think about this for a second.
All right. That's clothing.
Cover your shame and dress for the job you want.
I like that. Also, hot tip. If you want to sneak into a place, 3 outfits will get you into almost anywhere.
Reflective vest.
Reflective vest, high-vis vest.
Yeah.
Will get you in anywhere.
Yeah.
A good suit if you're a man.
Yeah.
Get you in
I can
almost
walk in anywhere when I get ready for lodge.
Yep. Number 3, a cook's jacket.
Sure.
Mhm.
Getting into the gym in a cook's jacket would look a little weird, but
Yeah, maybe not anywhere, but they'll get you to a lot of places.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean like a suit in a gym, same thing.
Yeah.
But those
High-vis
3,
vest, still fine in the gym.
high-vis vest, still, between those 3, you can get in almost anywhere. So,
Pick the right one for the right situation. Trust your judgment.
want to get into a concert? High-vis vest.
Oh, for sure. Or just a black shirt that says security on the back.
Yeah, but people just think you're a worker, they'll leave you alone.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my hot tip.
I like it. All right. Be sure to check out our socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Discord. Discord's the best place where we can share great memes, have great conversations, and also try to recruit people to join our church in an official capacity.
I was going to say, and more hot tips from Katie.
Always.
If that's not a selling feature, I don't know what is.
We've also got ways for you to give us money. We would love your support. We've got Patreon, where we've got exclusive content, extended interviews from a lot of the interviews that we've put out publicly.
Early release.
Also, the opportunity to maybe be ordained as a priest of the San Lenatus Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got merch, church merch.
Church merch.
We are on Spreadshirt. Just look up Holy Watermelon or follow the links in our show notes. Thanks for joining us.
Peace be with you.
By the late Middle Ages, the Christian prophecy had fulfilled itself.